Rufus and Carmen were in a suite on the 19th floor of the 12th Street Hotel, drenched in sweat. The mingling of sweat, perfume, and wild animal smells had driven them to insanity. The thermostat was set at a comfortable 70 degrees, but the temperature on the king-size bed with the black satin sheets was hot and humid. They'd opened the door to heaven together, with Rufus firmly planted in the deepest, innermost region of Carmen's most secret place, doggy style. Carmen lay flat on her stomach, captured like a fly in a spider's web, with Rufus pressed against her back as wetness ran down their legs and soiled the sheets. Rufus rolled from between Carmen's legs and sat in a chair opposite the bed. He sat in silence. He lit a cool Filter King cigarette and watched Carmen as she walked in all her womanly glory into the bathroom. Carmen, you think hubby has any idea that you're sharing his Putin-tang? I hope not. I don't think so. If he knew, how would he? If he knew, how do you think he'd react? He loves me. If he found out, it would tear him to pieces. I'm asking about his reaction. What would he do? Baby, I don't know. He's not the violent type, if that's what you're getting at. Carmen, believe me when I tell you, every man has his limit. Now, he may or may not know what his limit is, but like every man, he's got one. Most men would rather his woman give away his hard-earned money than for his woman to give away his hard-won pussy to another man. Rufus, the pussy don't belong to you or him. It belongs to me. I just let y'all use it from time to time. Carmen laughed, and so did Rufus. But to Rufus, the joke wasn't quite so funny. Carmen, if he ever finds out, make sure he doesn't let his hurt or anger spill over towards me. You make damn sure it stays between you and him. If he ever runs up on me with any bullshit, I'll dog him like a two-bit whore. Don't worry, Rufus, he won't bother you. If it ever happens, it won't be me, it'll be him that you'll have to worry about. Please, let's just change the subject. I'm done, but don't forget what I've said. Carmen was sickened by the tone in Rufus's voice when he talked about her husband. She knew Rufus was a man's man and associated with guys rumored to be killers. She didn't know and didn't want to know the details of what they were involved with, but she'd heard that they were a nasty bunch. A full-body mirror was attached to the wall just beside the face bowl in the bathroom. Carmen stood stock still directly in front of it, looking at her reflection, dreading what she'd gotten herself into. Carmen's husband, Jerome, drove a garbage truck for the city of Kansas City, Kansas. He made the kind of money considered good for poor folks without an education and few marketable skills. His benefit package included full health coverage for himself and family at minimum cost, a decent retirement plan, and a separate 401k that he contributed $100 a month to like clockwork. Jerome was a product of Plummerville, Arkansas. He'd had more than his share of fights and trouble as a kid. He liked to joke with a straight face that his reputation of being a badass was hard-earned and well-deserved. The family moved from Arkansas to Kansas City on his 15th birthday. Jerome's older brother by 3 years had been the trailblazer on the tough guy path back in Plummerville. Robert had been taking money from classmates and knocking their heads as far back as 3rd grade. The move to KC didn't scare Robert one damn bit. He was a senior in high school when he enrolled at Sumner. He'd only been at Sumner for 2 weeks when one of the football players called him Country Boy. By the time Robert was pulled off the football player, the only thing left to do was to call security in an ambulance. Sumner hadn't seen any beatings like the one Robert gave the football player. The principal felt he had no choice but to expel the Country Boy thug from Arkansas. Within a week, he was talked into joining the gang. The gang's main activity was crack cocaine, selling, not using. Their territory was Quindaro Avenue, 5th to 18th Street. Robert was barely 19 years old when they found his lifeless body lying face down in the street on the corner of 10th and Quindaro, shot 5 times. Robert's murder was a wake-up call for Jerome. It was a thunderbolt that made him realize that the street life was not the life for him. He called it squaring up when he joined Second Missionary Baptist Church in Grandview, Missouri. By 17, he'd been baptized and was singing in the church choir. That's where he met Carmen, singing in the young people's choir. They were married 1 week after high school graduation. Jerome was a good husband and a decent man, the kind of man many women were looking for in a husband, hard-working, money-saving, church-going, and affectionate. Carmen's mother raised her with the fire and brimstone. She believed in the church and the church's teaching. Sex before marriage was totally out of the question. She was a virgin until her wedding day. When sex became legal, Jerome started sucking her nipples and rubbing between her legs. Once it started, she couldn't seem to get enough. Carmen wanted it as much as she could get it, but she only got it a couple of nights a week when she was lucky. Carmen complained to her girlfriends that she and Jerome were unevenly yoked when it came to lovemaking. In every other way, she said he was wonderful. She gave him high praise for being a good provider and a dear friend. Carmen thought that maybe she was oversexed and that she was putting too much focus on the wrong thing. She even thought that it was God's way of testing her faith in him in the relationship he'd ordained. Sex, she said, wasn't bad with Jerome. In fact, at times she said it was downright good. It was just too irregular, on rare for her taste, and it didn't last long enough. She climaxed on rare occasions while Jerome's tidal wave never failed and was never late. She wanted to be fucked long and hard, but after Jerome reached his pleasure, he'd rarely answer the bell for round two. She'd touch him tender and kiss and suck him long and deep. From time to time, her work would pay dividends. Usually not. He'd fuck her like a stallion for 7 or 8 minutes and come like a fire hose. He'd plead for time, but before he could regroup, he'd be fast asleep. It was during one of her frustrated periods that she'd met Rufus at the Casablanca. She'd been watching him from afar for a couple of weeks. She'd been to the club with a girlfriend and spotted Rufus on the first visit. His flashing diamonds and gold, expensive tailor-made suits, and his air of confidence gave her a warm, tingly feeling. Something from a place she didn't know existed was pulling her to the forbidden zone. She didn't know who he was, but she found herself constantly daydreaming and thinking about him. After her third week and sixth visit to the club, she made up her mind to at least say hello. It took her a minute, but by the time she finished her second Long Island iced tea, she sashayed to the bar and introduced herself. The spark grew quickly into a flame. Rufus gave her all that Jerome couldn't or wouldn't, but she now began to dread the price she'd pay for trying to satisfy those desires from a world she didn't know. The conversation about Carmen's husband had stopped as suddenly as it had started. The silence was deafening. Rufus sat in the high arched back chair across from the bed and watched Carmen put on her form-fitting top, her skirt with a slit up the back, and her matching red pumps. She fixed her hair, put a little perfume behind her ears and on her neck, and applied cherry-flavored lip gloss to her mouth. Rufus moved from the chair, it seemed in slow motion, putting on his socks, slacks, and shoes. When he finished dressing, he left the room, closed the door, and quietly walked to the elevator. On the ride back to Kansas, Billie Holiday sang so sweetly over the car stereo system about her man that treats her ever so mean. Neither Rufus nor Carmen could come up with words to top sweet Billie's moans, so they drove on in silence, enraptured by the teardrops and morning dew of Lady Day. Rufus dropped her at a car in the parking lot of the Casablanca and headed back to Missouri. Neither said goodbye. This is from my book, Rolling with the Hot Sauce, by Walter Ray, available at Amazon.com, along with Cape Coast, Coming Home Through the Door, No Return, and The African Guide to Success in America. Support the cause. Peace.